The first time Kash Patel's hand shook, it was barely noticeable, just a slight tremor as he reached for the water pitcher during the House Oversight Committee hearing. By the third time, 4 to 5 minutes later, droplets splashed across the polished mahogany table. His tie, a bold presidential red, now bore a dark spot where nervous sweat had seeped through his shirt collar. Across the witness table, Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas sat motionless. She didn't move, didn't blink. She'd just watched with the patient intensity of a seasoned prosecutor who knows exactly what's hidden in the envelope she hasn't opened yet. Behind her, a meticulously organized stack of manila folders stood like ammunition ready to fire. Color-coded tabs bristled from the edges, and post-it notes marked precise targets she had already selected. The hearing room, packed with perhaps 200 people, felt like a packed stadium on game day. Every seat was filled. Reporters lined the back wall 3 deep, notebooks and cameras at the ready. Phones were held high to capture moments that C-SPAN fixed cameras might miss. In the gallery, clusters of FBI agents sat in tense groups, some stone-faced and visibly loyal to the new director, others leaning forward with barely concealed anticipation. The air was thick with tension. Something major was about to break, and everyone in the room could feel it building. The nominal topic of the hearing was FBI leadership, accountability, and constitutional oversight, bureaucratic jargon that usually cleared hearing rooms faster than a fire alarm. But this session was different. This was Kash Patel, just 3 months into his controversial tenure as FBI Director, finally facing the congressional oversight he had spent years loudly championing from the outside. The first 90 minutes had unfolded like scripted political theater. Republican members lobbed softballs his way. Patel caught them effortlessly, delivering practiced soundbites about restoring integrity to the Bureau and ending its alleged weaponization against conservatives. He smiled confidently at the cameras, thanked committee members for their leadership, and appeared completely at ease in the spotlight. Then Chairman James Comer uttered 4 simple words that shifted the entire atmosphere. Representative Crockett is recognized. Patel's hand instinctively moved toward the water pitcher again. Before we dive deeper into this riveting moment, where are you listening to this story right now? Are you in your car on the commute to work? At the gym pounding the treadmill? Or maybe at home doing dishes? Drop a comment below and let me know. I love hearing where these powerful narratives find you, because what happens next is the kind of explosive exchange that makes people pull over to the side of the road just to hear how it unfolds. It's the type that has you turning up the volume when someone else enters the room. It's the kind of masterclass that restores faith in the system that sometimes, just sometimes, thorough preparation and unyielding pursuit of truth can triumph over raw power. What you're about to hear is not mere rhetoric or empty political theater. It's a systematic, evidence-based dismantling of a man who believed his unwavering loyalty to power would shield him from accountability and truth. But it wouldn't. Not this time. Crockett opened the first folder without even glancing down at it. She had memorized every single page, every detail, every damning quote. Director Patel, she began calmly, you wrote a book titled Government Gangsters. Hatch title, indeed. In it, you stated, and I'm quoting your exact words, identify and remove every single bureaucrat who has weaponized the federal government. Do you stand by that statement today? Patel leaned confidently into his microphone, his voice radiating assurance. Absolutely, Congresswoman. The American people deserve nothing less. Great, Crockett replied evenly. Then you'll have no problem explaining this. She held up a document for the cameras to capture clearly. The FBI seal was prominently visible at the top. Even from the gallery seats high above, attendees could see Patel's eyes widen slightly. This is an internal FBI memorandum, dated February 2nd, 2025, just 3 weeks after your confirmation. It's titled, she paused deliberately for effect, Personnel Assessment Framework Political Reliability Metrics. She let the title hang in the air before continuing. Director, what exactly is a political reliability metric? The confidence in Patel's posture evaporated like mist in the morning sun. That document is being taken out of context. Context. Crockett smiled. But it wasn't warm, it was sharp, calculated. Let me provide some context for you, then. She flipped to another page. This memo establishes a scoring system for evaluating FBI agents. Categories include alignment with administration priorities, political registration history, and my personal favorite, social media sentiment analysis. That's essentially checking agents' voting records, party affiliations, and what they post online, isn't it? That's a gross oversimplification. Is it? She interrupted smoothly, pulling out yet another sheet. Here's the scoring rubric you approved. Plus 10 points for demonstrated alignment with executive priorities. Minus 5 points for association with officials from the previous administration. Minus 10 for any public statements contradicting administration positions. She looked directly at him. Director, this isn't a standard performance evaluation. This is a loyalty test, plain and simple. Patel reached for his water glass again. This time, his hand shook so noticeably that he gripped it with both hands to steady it. Water sloshed over the rim despite his efforts. Careful, Crockett said softly, almost sympathetically. That's mahogany. A ripple of suppressed laughter escaped from several spots in the gallery. Patel's face flushed a deep crimson. Congresswoman, what you're describing is standard personnel management practices. Standard. Her voice cut through the room like a precise scalpel. Let me tell you what's not standard. She gestured to her stack of folders. Supervisory Special Agent Jennifer Martinez, 22 years with the Bureau, spotless record, renowned counterterrorism expert, registered Democrat. On February 15th, just 2 weeks after your memo circulated, she was suddenly reassigned from the Counterterrorism Division to, let me check my notes, Administrative Review of Historical Case Files in Little Rock, Arkansas. She paused, letting the implications sink in for the entire room. That's FBI speak for professional exile, isn't it, Director? Personnel decisions are confidential in. Then why do I have 17 more cases exactly like this one? Crockett gestured emphatically to her towering stack. Agent Michael Chen, Agent Patricia Williams, Agent David Robinson, all registered Democrats or independents, all with stellar, unblemished records, all suddenly reassigned, demoted, or placed under administrative review within 3 weeks of you taking office. She leaned forward. Want to know what they all have in common, besides their party registration or lack thereof? Patel remained silent, his jaw tight. They all worked on January 6-related investigations, specifically probes into coordination between extremist groups and certain White House officials during the period. The room fell deathly silent. You could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning system. But here's what's truly fascinating, Director. Crockett pulled out another set of documents. The agents who replaced them. Let me read you some names and backgrounds. Marcus Talbot attended the January 6th rally in Washington, D.C. Sarah Morrison donated $5,000 to President Trump's Legal Defense Fund. James Butler hosts a popular podcast called Patriots Against the Deep State. She looked up from her notes, her gaze piercing. You didn't just remove Democrats, Director. You replaced them with individuals who attended Trump rallies, donated to his causes, or publicly championed his narrative. Patel's lawyer leaned in urgently, whispering something in his ear. Patel jerked away sharply, snatching the microphone closer. Those agents were selected based solely on their qualifications and expertise. Really? Crockett consulted her notes again. Because Agent Talbot had 0 prior experience in counterterrorism. Agent Morrison was a mid-level analyst in a completely unrelated division. And Agent Butler? He was handling white-collar crime cases in Des Moines. None of them had relevant experience in the areas they were suddenly placed into. But they all shared one qualification you clearly valued more than actual expertise, didn't they? Unquestioning loyalty to Donald Trump. That is absolutely false and defamatory. Then explain this. She held up a printed screenshot, enlarging it for the cameras. This is from an internal FBI chat group dated February 20th. One of your senior deputies wrote, and I quote directly, Director wants mega loyalists in key positions. Start vetting for 2020 Trump voters. Shall I read the rest of the thread? Or are you going to claim this is out of context too? Patel's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. No words emerged. Crockett's voice dropped to a quieter, more dangerous tone, one laced with genuine disappointment. Let me ask you something simple, Director. When you took your oath of office, did you swear to defend the Constitution of the United States, or did you swear to defend Donald Trump's personal political interests? I swore to defend the Constitution, Patel replied, his voice cracking slightly too loud, too desperate. Did you? Crockett leaned forward intently. Because the FBI building looks less like the Federal Bureau of Investigation and more like the Federal Bureau of Martyr Indoctrination. The soundbite landed explosively. Phones across the gallery lit up as reporters and staffers frantically typed and texted. The Democratic side of the committee leaned back with thinly veiled satisfaction. Republicans shifted uncomfortably, looking like they'd swallowed something bitter. Representative Jim Jordan jumped in quickly, attempting to run interference. Mr. Chairman, this line of questioning is clearly politically motivated and... Oh, Mr. Jordan, Crockett interjected without even glancing his way. I'm just getting started. She turned back to Patel, whose face had drained of color. The forgotten water glass sat on the table, his hand still trembling around it. Director, I have personnel files for 37 FBI agents who have been reassigned, demoted, or placed on administrative leave since you took office. Every single one is a registered Democrat or independent with no party affiliation. Every single one had impeccable records, and every single one was replaced by someone whose primary qualification appears to be unwavering loyalty to Donald Trump. She paused again, letting the staggering number resonate. 37 agents in 3 months, Director. That's not reform. That's a systematic purge. Patel attempted to rally. Congresswoman, you're cherry-picking isolated incidents to manufacture a false narrative. Isolated. Crockett's laugh was sharp and incredulous. 37 agents is not isolated. It's deliberate. It's calculated. And it's precisely what you advocated for in your own book, only now you're applying it to tug at different people. She closed the first folder with a resounding snap that echoed through the microphones. Let me be crystal clear. Director Patel, you're not cleaning up the FBI. You're dry cleaning Donald Trump's political laundry, and you're misusing the Bureau's precious resources to do it. Patel slammed his hand down on the table in frustration. The water glass jumped, tipped precariously, and finally fell, spilling across the mahogany surface and soaking into his carefully prepared opening statement and notes. No one rushed to assist him. The room watched in stunned silence as the water spread. Mr. Chairman, Patel said, his voice shaking with barely contained rage, I don't have to sit here and endure these baseless accusations. Actually, Director, Crockett replied with unyielding steel in her tone, you do. You're under oath. You're under subpoena, and I still have 11 minutes remaining. She opened the next folder without missing a beat. Patel stared at the spreading water stain, at his ruined notes, at the dozens of cameras capturing his every flustered reaction, and finally at Jasmine Crockett, who sat with the serene calm of someone holding an unbeatable hand. For the first time that day, he looked genuinely scared. After a tense 15-minute recess during which Patel presumably retreated to consult frantically with White House advisers and his legal team, the hearing resumed. Patel had managed to compose himself somewhat. He returned with new notes, a fresh dry tie, and a new glass of water that he pointedly avoided touching. But his hands, now resting visibly on the table, still betrayed a persistent tremor. Chairman Comer attempted to assist, clearing his throat before speaking. Before we continue, I want to remind all members about maintaining proper decorum and respect for our distinguished witness. Mr. Chairman Crockett responded pleasantly. Though her eyes remained deadly serious, I intend to be very respectful. I'm going to let the director's own words and actions speak for themselves. She opened a blood-red folder, this time the color choice deliberate and symbolic. Director Patel, let's shift to January 6th. Specifically, let's discuss what you've done to the FBI's ongoing investigations into the events of January 6th since assuming office. Patel straightened slightly, entering more familiar territory he had rehearsed extensively. Congresswoman, I've ordered comprehensive reviews to ensure all investigations are conducted fairly and— To ensure what? Crockett cut in. That the truth remains conveniently buried. She produced another memo. On February 10th, you sent this directive to the Assistant Director of the Counterterrorism Division. Subject line reclassification protocol capital breach investigation. In it, you ordered certain files reclassified to protect sensitive sources and methods. Standard procedure, correct? Yes, when national security demands it. Except, Crockett continued, her voice hardening, the files you reclassified weren't about protecting sources and methods at all. They were about potential coordination, specifically coordination between domestic extremist groups and White House officials in the lead-up to January 6th. Files documenting phone calls, meetings, and what seasoned FBI analysts described as advanced knowledge of planned violence. She held up the memo prominently. You buried them, Director, not for national security, but to shield Donald Trump from scrutiny. That is absolutely untrue. Let me read you something from a credible source. She pulled out another document. This is from an FBI analyst with 20 years of exemplary service in domestic terrorism, a whistleblower, who contacted my office because he could no longer remain silent. She began reading aloud. On February 18th, I submitted a detailed investigative plan to examine communications between Proud Boys leadership and individuals in the Trump White House. The plan included specific dates, phone records, and witness testimony. It was approved by my chain of command and forwarded to the director's office. 3 hours later, it returned stamped investigation declined. No explanation provided. Crockett looked up sharply. 3 hours, Director. My office's parking validation takes longer than that. But a sensitive, well-predicated investigation into possible White House coordination with January 6th violence declined in 3 hours flat. Patel clenched his jaw, without reviewing the full investigative predicate. Oh, I have the full predicate right here. She lifted a thick-bound document, 47 pages of detailed timelines, phone records showing 17 calls between Proud Boys leaders and a known White House number in the week before January 6th, meeting logs, sworn witness statements. It's thorough. It's compelling. It's exactly the kind of evidence that demands a full investigation. She leaned in closer. So why did you kill it? I didn't kill anything. No. Crockett produced yet another sheet. This is an email from your office to the Washington field office dated February 19th, one day after you declined that plan. Quote, all pending investigations related to January 6th White House contacts are to be reviewed by the director's office before proceeding. No new investigative actions without explicit approval. She set it down firmly. Director, that's not oversight. That's deliberate obstruction. Patel's lawyer grabbed his arm again, whispering urgently. Patel shook him off aggressively, leaning into the microphone with forced bravado. Congresswoman, you're deliberately mischaracterizing routine investigative oversight procedures. Routine? Crockett's voice rose slightly for emphasis. Let me tell you what's not routine. On March 3rd, FBI agents were prepared to raid the home of a former Trump White House aide as part of a lawful investigation into improper handling of classified documents. Standard procedure, early morning execution for element of surprise. She didn't pause for response, but at 11 p.m. the night before, 7 hours before the scheduled raid, someone from your office called the team and ordered them to stand down indefinitely. That decision was based on evolving intelligence and— Was it? Crockett held up phone records. Because the only outgoing call you made between issuing that stand-down order and midnight was to Alina Haber, President Trump's personal attorney. The call lasted 37 minutes. What did you two discuss at that hour, Director? The weather? The room erupted briefly, Republicans shouting objections about classified information, Democrats demanding full answers. Chairman Comer banged his gavel repeatedly for order. When calm returned, Crockett spoke quietly but powerfully, her words cutting through the lingering noise. Director, I'm going to show you something important, and I want you to examine it carefully. She held up a large photograph for all cameras to capture. It depicted two men in an office, one in a suit, clearly Patel, and the other in full tactical gear. This photo was taken on February 14th. In your personal office. That's you on the left. The man on the right is the lead agent assigned to execute that raid on the Trump aide's home. According to metadata, this photo was time-stamped at 3:47 p.m. The raid was cancelled at 11 p.m. that night, and your call to Ali Nerhaber occurred at 10:23 p.m. She lowered the photo slowly. You consulted with Trump's personal lawyer and then called off a lawful FBI raid. That's not law enforcement, Director. That's acting as a personal henchman. Patel's face had gone ashen gray. There were legitimate concerns about... About what? Crockett's voice cracked like a whip. About following evidence? About doing your job impartially? Or were you more concerned about upsetting the man who appointed you to this position? She continued relentlessly, producing document after document. Each one drove another nail into the narrative. Investigation into Trump PAC fundraising irregularities. Closed within 48 hours of Patel taking office. Probe into potential Hatch Act violations by White House staff. Denied outright. Mishandling of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. Suddenly deprioritized. Fake elector schemes in multiple states. Key agents reassigned. She looked up from the pile. But do you know which investigations you did aggressively open and pursue? 47 new counterintelligence probes into critics of President Trump, including former officials who testified against him, late General Mark Milley, John Bolton, and Cassidy Hutchinson, all suddenly under scrutiny for vague security violations. Crockett stood fully now, her presence commanding the room. She didn't need to raise her voice. The evidence spoke volumes. Director Patel, you wrote an entire book calling others government gangsters. But real gangsters protect their boss at all costs. They intimidate witnesses. They make inconvenient evidence disappear. They target enemies while shielding friends. And that's exactly the pattern we've seen under your leadership. Patel shot to his feet suddenly, finger jabbing accusingly across the table. You have no right to. Sit down, Director. Crockett commanded with icy authority. You're not in charge here today. You're a witness under oath. And you're going to answer the questions posed to you. For a charged moment, they stared each other down across the expanse of the hearing room, Patel standing red-faced and trembling with fury, Crockett standing calm and immovable as granite. Slowly, almost defeatedly, Patel sank back into his chair. Now, Crockett said, resuming her seat, let me show you one final thing from this section. She carefully pulled out a document she handled with particular gravity. This is a transcript of a recorded conversation on February 28th recorded on a government line, making it fully lawful for congressional oversight purposes. The other party's name is redacted in this unclassified version, but it was the head of your criminal investigative division. She began reading. We need this to go away. The president is asking about it every day. He wants to know why people who protected him are being harassed while people who attacked him walk free. That's you speaking, Director. Silence gripped the room. You weren't referencing evidence or legal requirements. You said the president wants. You admitted on a recorded government line that you're taking direct orders from Donald Trump. She set the transcript down deliberately. Director Patel, you're not leading the FBI independently. You're functioning as Donald Trump's personal fixer with a badge and unlimited resources. Patel's hands pressed flat against the table now, as if physically trying to stop their visible shaking. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible above a whisper. I have served this country with honor. Have you? Crockett cut him off sharply. Because true honor means following the law even when it's politically inconvenient. Honor means investigating crimes thoroughly even when they lead to powerful friends. Honor means placing the Constitution above personal loyalty to any one man. And, Director, your actions have demonstrated none of that. She gathered her papers methodically. I have no further questions for this round, but I have ample evidence, and so will the Inspector General, who will receive all of this documentation tomorrow. Patel sat frozen in place. Behind him, his lawyer scribbled notes furiously. The hearing room buzzed with shocked whispers and hurried conversations. Crockett turned briefly to address the cameras directly, the American public watching live. This is what corruption looks like when it wears an expensive suit and carries an official badge. The afternoon session commenced 20 minutes late. Patel had requested additional time to consult with Counsel Washington Code for retreating to a private room to manage a full-blown panic attack while his legal team scrambled for damage control strategies. It didn't help. When they returned, Patel appeared to have aged years in mere minutes. His tie hung loosened around his neck. His once perfectly styled hair was disheveled from repeated nervous breaking of fingers. He clutched a fresh legal pad covered in his lawyer's hurried scribbles, potential talking points, defensive rebuttals, anything to survive the onslaught. But Jasmine Crockett still had substantial ammunition remaining, far from finished. Director Patel, she began anew, and he visibly flinched at the sound of his own name. You've been extraordinarily vocal about alleged FISA abuse over the years. It's practically your entire public brand, the crusader who exposed FISA corruption, the champion against overreach in the surveillance state. You appeared on every podcast, every cable show, ranting about how the FBI weaponized FISA warrants against Trump associates. Fair summary. Patel grasped at the familiar ground. This was territory he knew well, his personal wheelhouse. Yes, Congresswoman, I firmly believe Americans deserve transparency when their government. Great, Crockett interrupted. Then you'll have no issue explaining why FISA warrant applications have surged by 40% since you became director. The statistic hit like a thunderbolt. Audible gasps echoed through the gallery. Republican members immediately raised points of order, claiming classified information and inappropriate disclosure. But Crockett was prepared. Mr. Chairman, these aggregate statistics come directly from unclassified summary reports provided to the Intelligence Committee. The numbers have been cleared for public discussion. If the director wishes to dispute them under oath, he's welcome to do so. She turned back to Patel, whose mouth opened and closed soundlessly. 40% increase. Director, you spent years decrying FISA warrants as overused, abused, and weaponized. And now, under your leadership, you're authorizing them at a rate higher than any director in FBI history. Quite the interesting evolution. Those numbers lack proper context regarding the current. Then provide the context, Crockett challenged. Explain to this committee and the American people why the self-proclaimed crusader against the surveillance state has dramatically expanded its use. Patel glanced desperately at his notes, finding little help. The threat environment has evolved significantly, requiring... Has it? She produced a large color-coded chart, holding it high for visibility. Because according to the breakdown I obtained directly from the FISA court, the increase isn't targeting foreign intelligence threats. It's overwhelmingly domestic American citizens. She pointed to key sections. 63% of your new FISA warrants target individuals or organizations affiliated with progressive causes of climate activists, immigration advocates, voting rights groups, Black Lives Matter chapters, and similar. She paused for emphasis. Meanwhile, you've approved exactly 0 FISA warrants targeting far-right extremist groups in these 3 months. That's because the far-right domestic threat has been exaggerated by partisan narratives. By reality, Crockett countered incredulously. Director, we all lived through January 6th. We've endured multiple mass shootings carried out by white supremacists. Your own FBI before your arrival identified far-right domestic violent extremism as the #1 terrorism threat facing America. But you dismissed that as exaggeration. She pulled out another document. Let me highlight exactly who you're targeting instead. March 3rd, you approved FISA surveillance on 17 individuals associated with climate activist groups planning peaceful protests at the Department of Energy. Predication. Potential coordination with foreign adversaries. Director, do you possess evidence that Greenpeace is secretly working for China? Because the public would love to see it. Scattered laughter broke out in the gallery before attendees caught themselves. Patel flushed deeply. Those warrants were predicated on specific, credible intelligence I cannot discuss in an open session. How convenient, Crockett replied with a razor-sharp smile. Let's try another example. February 20th, FISA surveillance authorized on an immigration rights organization in Arizona. The predication document states concerning communications with foreign nationals. Director, they're an immigration rights group. Communicating with immigrants and foreign nationals is literally their core mission. That's like obtaining a FISA warrant on a restaurant for suspicious communications with people seeking food. More laughter rippled through the room. Louder this time. Even Chairman Comer avoided eye contact with Patel. February 28th, Crockett pressed on FISA warrant on a Muslim community organization in Michigan. Predication of pattern of contacts with individuals in countries of concern. Director, they were assisting refugees fleeing war in Syria. Should they have limited outreach to contacts in Topeka instead? Congresswoman, you're deliberately oversimplifying complex national security matters. Am I? She produced another example. March 1st, this one's particularly egregious. You personally approved FISA surveillance on 2 Democratic congressional staffers, American citizens, with active security clearances who passed rigorous background checks. Their suspected crime: leaking information about your planned FBI reorganization to the press. She let that sink in. So exercising First Amendment rights to inform the public about potential government misconduct now qualifies for foreign intelligence surveillance. Patel struggled. Those matters were predicated on legitimate concerns regarding foreign influence and... Foreign influence? Crockett repeated slowly for emphasis. These are congressional staffers vetted by the government itself. But because they exposed your plans to purge non-loyalists from the FBI, you labeled them potential foreign agents. Her voice dropped to a colder register. Or is the real issue that they revealed the truth, and you couldn't allow that to spread? Patel gripped the table edges, knuckles turning white. Let me summarize what I believe is occurring here, Crockett said, beginning to pace deliberately. You built an entire media brand pretending to champion civil liberties. You claimed FISA warrants should require clear, convincing evidence of actual foreign intelligence activities. You mocked the previous standards as essentially non-existent, allowing political targeting disguised as national security concerns. Remember saying all that? She stopped pacing and faced him directly. But now that you hold power, those same lowered standards are suddenly acceptable because the targets have changed. When FISA was used against Trump associates, it was tyrannical abuse. When you deployed against Trump's critics and political opponents, it's suddenly good law enforcement. Director Patel, you're not a reformer. You're a profound hypocrite, weaponizing the very surveillance powers you once condemned to silence dissent and target American citizens for exercising their constitutional rights. That is completely unfounded. Let me conclude with one more exhibit. She lifted a thick stack of approved applications. These are FISA applications you've personally signed. I'll read sample predicating language and you can confirm if it meets your own published standards. She began quoting. Subject has demonstrated anti-administration sentiment on social media platforms from the climate activists' application. Subject has coordinated with organizations openly critical of current immigration enforcement policies. Arizona Group. Subject maintains relationships with foreign nationals who have expressed opposition to U.S. foreign policy. Muslim Community Organization. She looked up. Director, these aren't legitimate intelligence indicators. These are purely political descriptors disagreeing with administration views, criticizing policies, associating with people who hold different opinions. That's not evidence of foreign spying. That's evidence of active participation in democracy. Patel made one final attempt. Congresswoman, you're selectively quoting from multi-page applications containing detailed—
Detailed what? Crockett interjected. Detailed political profiling?
Because that's precisely what these documents reveal. She held up the entire stack. Every single one could be boiled down to a subject disagrees with President Trump.
That's not a valid FISA predicate.
That's compiling an enemies list.
She returned to her seat and retrieved one last document.
When she spoke again, her voice resonated like a solemn bell across the hushed room. Director, I want to read you something you said yourself on a podcast in 2022 discussing alleged FISA abuse under prior leadership.
Your exact quote: when law enforcement uses surveillance tools to target political opponents, we no longer live in a democracy. We live in a police state.
And anyone who enables that is a traitor to the Constitution.
She met his eyes unflinchingly.
Those were your words, Director, traitor to the Constitution.
So what does that make you now?
Patel's face drained completely of color. His hands, still gripping the table, shook uncontrollably.
Behind him, his lawyer buried his head in his hands. I yield the remainder of my time, Crockett said quietly, her voice carrying profound finality. Because frankly, I can't bear to look at you any longer. She sat down.
Patel remained seated, visibly shattered, exposed, dismantled, and broken before the nation.
And the hearing wasn't even over. By the time the final round of questioning commenced, Kash Patel resembled a man awaiting inevitable judgment, resigned to his fate. His tie dangled loosely. His prepared materials lay ignored and were damaged. What was the point of notes when confronted with irrefutable evidence? Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was recognized next and immediately yielded her remaining time to Crockett, a coordinated maneuver that drew audible groans from Republicans.
They knew the decisive blow was coming.
Crockett rose once more, this time bypassing her desk entirely. She walked around to the front, perching confidently on its edge close enough that Patel couldn't avoid her direct gaze.
Director Patel, we're going to conclude where we should have begun with your solemn oath of office.
When you were sworn in, what exactly did you swear to do?
Patel's voice emerged hoarse and strained. I swore to support and defend the Constitution. The Constitution, Crockett echoed emphatically. Not the President.
Not the Republican Party. Not Donald Trump personally. The Constitution of the United States. Yes. Good. She produced a phone log document.
This is from your official FBI cell phone obtained through lawful congressional oversight channels.
It shows that in your first 60 days as director, you engaged in 42 phone calls with White House personnel, 17 with Trump's personal attorneys, 8 with White House counsel, and 12 directly with President Trump himself. She held it up clearly. That's more direct presidential contact than the previous 3 FBI directors combined across their full tenures.
Why so many calls, Director?
I provided briefings to the President on critical national security matters. Did you? She produced another analysis sheet.
Let's examine the timing patterns. February 14th, a 37-minute call with Trump. 3 hours later, you closed an investigation involving a Trump-affiliated PAC. February 22nd, a 4 to 5 minutes with the President.
Same day, you initiated a counterintelligence probe into John Bolton. March 5th, 2 calls totaling over an hour with Trump and his legal team. The next day, you personally intervened to cancel that FBI raid we discussed earlier.
She lowered the log. Director, these aren't routine briefings. These are direct orders.
You're not independently informing the President you're receiving and obeying his directives.
Patel attempted a response, but his voice cracked audibly.
He reached desperately for the new water glass.
His hand trembled so violently that water splashed over the sides again.
He tried to drink but couldn't steady it, finally setting it down hard with another spill.
No one in the room stirred to help. Everyone watched the unraveling in real time. Let me lay out exactly what my office has compiled, Crockett continued softly but relentlessly.
Testimony from 7 current FBI agents stating you routinely reference what the president wants in high-level meetings. Emails where you instructed senior staff our job is to protect the president's ability to govern.
Recordings, yes. Legal recordings of you directing subordinates to make investigations into Trump associates go away because he's asking about them every day. She paused, allowing the weight to settle.
You're not operating the FBI as an independent law enforcement agency. You're running it as Donald Trump's personal shield and enforcement arm.
Patel's lawyer clutched his arm again, whispering frantically. Patel jerked away violently, this time knocking over the water glass entirely. It crashed to the floor, shattering with a sharp crack. Water spread across the marble glass shards glittering under the bright lights. No cleanup crew intervened immediately. The mess remained symbolic.
Crockett pressed on undeterred.
Let me ask plainly, has the FBI, under your direction, opened any new investigations into Donald Trump or his close associates? I cannot discuss ongoing or potential investigations.
Yes or no, Director? Have you opened even one new probe into Donald Trump?
Ongoing matters are confidential.
You haven't, she stated firmly. It wasn't a question.
In 3 months, despite numerous publicly known allegations, classified documents mishandling, January 6 coordination, fake elector schemes, Hatch Act violations, you haven't initiated a single new investigation.
But you've launched 47 into his critics and perceived enemies.
The math is straightforward, Director. She stepped closer, ensuring both faces filled camera frames.
One final exhibit. She held up another memo.
From the FBI's Washington field office, dated March 1st. Details compelling evidence of potential crimes involving senior White House officials. The field office recommended immediate full investigation.
Your office denied it in 2 hours.
She held up 2 fingers. 2 hours. Most legitimate requests take days or weeks for review, but one implicating Trump's inner circle,
denied in record time. The submitting agent told my staff he's never seen anything processed or buried that quickly in 15 years. She lowered the memo.
So I'll ask you one last time, Director Patel, and consider your answer carefully.
You're under oath.
You're on live national television. Millions of Americans are watching right now.
The room held its collective breath.
Absolute silence.
Who do you truly serve? Do you serve the Constitution of the United States, or do you serve Donald Trump?
The silence stretched, heavy and crushing.
You could almost hear heartbeats.
Patel's mouth moved silently at first.
No sound. He tried again. I serve
the Constitution.
His voice broke completely on the final word. Do you? Crockett's tone shifted to gentle devastation, more powerful than any shout.
Because every decision you've made screams the opposite. Every investigation opened or closed. Every phone call with Trump. Every loyalty test imposed on agents. Every FISA warrant against critics. Every piece of January 6th evidence, buried all of it, declares loyalty to one man over the Constitution. She reached into her final folder and withdrew a single, crisp sheet. This is the exact text of your oath of office, taken on January 21st, 2025.
Allow me to read it to you in full.
She recited slowly, deliberately, each phrase landing like a hammer. I, Kash Patel, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
So help me God. She looked up, locking eyes with him one last time.
You have not supported the Constitution, you've subordinated it to partisan politics. You have not borne true faith to it, you've shown faith only to one individual. You have not discharged your duties faithfully, you've wielded them as a partisan weapon. Her voice dropped to a near whisper, yet every microphone captured it perfectly. Director Patel, you have betrayed your oath. You have betrayed the FBI. You have betrayed the trust of the American people. And if there is justice or a higher power, you will answer for what you've done to this sacred institution." Patel's hands dropped to his lap, clenched tightly to hide the shaking.
His head bowed low.
Cameras zoomed in mercilessly, capturing the glisten of building tears in his eyes.
He attempted to speak, but couldn't form words.
Crockett stood tall, addressing Chairman Cummer formally, but her words were etched for history.
"Mr.
Chairman, I move that this committee recommend the immediate removal of Director Patel from office for gross violation of his oath, politicization of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, obstruction of justice, and conduct utterly unbecoming the Director of the FBI.
Furthermore, I recommend immediate referral of his actions to the Department of Justice Inspector General for full criminal investigation."
She gathered her folders methodically, glanced at Patel one final time, and delivered a parting line. "You should be deeply ashamed of yourself."
"But I suspect you lack the integrity required to feel true shame."
With that, she turned and walked out of the hearing room, leaving chaos in her wake. Republicans shouted objections. Democrats rose in applause. Cameras flashed wildly. Reporters scrambled. And in the center of it all, Kash Patel sat alone with his head buried in his hands, shoulders heaving, utterly destroyed on live national television.
The spilled water from the shattered glass had reached his shoes. He didn't notice.
He noticed nothing anymore except the irreversible ruins of his reputation and career, spreading around him like that water, inevitable, unstoppable, and entirely self-inflicted. The video footage exploded online before Patel even reached his vehicle. Within 30 minutes, Kash Patel meltdown trended #1 worldwide, amassing over 3 million posts. TikTok overflowed with edited clips, each more devastating than the last. The repeated hand tremors, the voice cracking when asked who he served, the water glass shattering, the moment he couldn't respond, tears welling as his head dropped. But the clip that achieved nuclear virality was the final wide shot, Crockett striding out confidently while Patel remained seated, head in hands, surrounded by broken glass and ruined notes.
Someone overlaid Adele's Rolling in the Deep. It racked up 12 million views in under 4 hours. Mainstream media couldn't ignore the spectacle. CNN's Jake Tapper led his show today. We witnessed the complete, real-time evisceration of an FBI director. This wasn't merely a hearing, it was a methodical execution by evidence.
MSNBC Rachel Maddow devoted 2 full hours, featuring constitutional scholars, former FBI leaders, and legal analysts. Consensus was overwhelming. Crockett uncovered genuine, serious corruption, not partisan disagreement.
"What we saw," former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe stated gravely, "was evidence of the most severe institutional corruption I've encountered in decades of service.
Director Patel must resign tonight. If not, Congress must remove him."
Even Fox News struggled to spin it effectively.
Attempts to frame it as partisan attacks faltered against the raw footage of Patel unable to defend basic actions, crumbling under scrutiny. When the best defense is he looked guilty and broke down. The battle is already lost. By evening, fractures emerged in Republican support. Senator Lisa Murkowski having voted to confirm Director Patel. "Today's testimony leaves me with profound regret.
I call for an immediate Inspector General probe." Senator Mitt Romney went further. This was not misunderstanding or politics. It was clear evidence of high-level corruption in law enforcement.
Director Patel should resign immediately or be removed. Senator Susan Collins offered measured condemnation, GOP code for abandonment. Today's revelations raise serious, credible concerns warranting thorough investigation.
The White House response was carefully evasive. Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt labeled it a partisan witch hunt against a dedicated public servant.
When pressed, does President Trump retain full confidence in Director Patel?
She paused meaningfully before replying. The president appoints individuals he believes will best serve the nation. That non-answer spoke volumes in Washington.
Behind closed doors, leaks revealed Trump furious not at Crockett, untouchable, but at Patel. "He made me look weak. Sat there crumbling like a child. He was supposed to be tough, smart.
He looked pathetic." Trump prized optics above all. and a loyalist breaking down emotionally under questioning from a black congresswoman was catastrophic branding.
By midnight, sources leaked White House counsel exploring exit strategies, preferably a quiet resignation framed as spending more time with family. But the deepest damage unfolded within the FBI itself.
Whistleblowers who provided Crockett's evidence became quiet heroes among rank-and-file agents. Those silently seething under Patel's regime found courage to speak.
The trickle of leaks became a flood. Within a week, 17 additional agents submitted formal testimony to the Oversight Committee, consistent stories of political interference, forced loyalty oaths, investigations launched or killed for partisan reasons.
The FBI Agents Association, historically apolitical and neutral, issued a rare, unprecedented statement, testimony, before Congress raises grave concerns about the Bureau's independence and core integrity. FBI agents swear oaths to the Constitution, not to any individual leader.
If substantiated, these allegations represent a fundamental betrayal of that oath and the public's trust. In Bureau culture, that was equivalent to open revolt against their director. Senior leaders quietly circulated updated resumes. 2 assistant directors resigned abruptly, citing personal reasons, transparent code for distancing themselves. Field offices descended into uncertainty. Agents questioned which cases were legitimate versus political vendettas.
Prosecutors hesitated to rely on potentially tainted FBI evidence. Defense attorneys in Trump-related matters filed motions citing interference.
The institution Patel claimed to save was imploding under his stewardship.
Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett became a cultural phenomenon overnight. Her campaign site crashed from overwhelming traffic.
Donations surged not just to a re-election, but to progressive organizations nationwide. #Crockett destroyed him became a rallying slogan.
She appeared on every major platform as Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel, The Daily Show.
Pod Save America analyzed her technique episode-long. Law schools incorporated clips into curricula. The Crockett method became a Georgetown seminar on effective cross-examination. Young women of color, aspiring lawyers especially, flooded social media. I'm applying to law school because of what I witnessed today. Even Barack Obama, rarely commenting on current drama, liked to tweet praising this is what preparation and integrity look like. Crockett's response remained grounded. In a New York Times interview, I didn't do this for viral fame or applause.
I did it because someone needed to confront the truth about what's happening to our democratic institutions.
The FBI is far too vital to become any president's private loyalty force.
Law enforcement must remain independent, or we have rule by one man, not rule of law. That's not the America we fight for. But she couldn't resist one iconic tweet at 11 p.m. post-hearing to everyone asking if I prepared thoroughly for the hearing. Yes. It's called doing your homework.
Some folks should try it sometime. Attached a photo of her legendary document stack, color-coded tabs prominent. It garnered 4 million likes. 3 days later, the DOJ Inspector General announced a formal probe. This office has received credible allegations of potential criminal conduct, including obstruction of justice, abuse of authority, and civil rights violations under color of law. A full investigation is now underway.
In D.C., potential criminal conduct isn't speculation, it's a career death knell.
Patel, through counsel, claimed to welcome scrutiny to clear his name. Few believed it, least of all, reportedly, Patel himself. For weeks, Washington awaited resignation.
It didn't come. Trump refused public firing, admitting defeat to Crockett's narrative but cease all defense.
In Trump circles, silence was the ultimate punishment. Patel appeared daily at headquarters, isolated in his office. No public events, no media, no internal meetings. A director in name only, a ghost. Agents passed his door without acknowledgement.
Staff bypassed him on decisions.
Remarkably, the Bureau functions smoother without his meddling. Evidence continued mounting.
The IG probe expanded subpoenas for records, executed warrants, more witnesses.
Crockett kept releasing documents methodically, reminding the public relentlessly. She became Patel's unrelenting shadow, the truth he couldn't suppress. 6 weeks post-hearing, the Washington Post published a definitive long-form investigation, The Fall of Kash Patel, a case study in loyalty over law.
It corroborated every Crockett allegation and uncovered more.
It closed with a quote from a veteran senior agent who'd served under 6 directors Patel believed blind loyalty would protect him.
He thought power was an unbreakable shield.
He assumed Trump would rescue him. But he learned the hard truth: every corrupt official eventually faces loyalty flows upward, accountability flows downward, and when someone like Jasmine Crockett arrives armed with undeniable facts and the courage to voice them, no amount of loyalty saves you from the truth. The piece dominated discourse, entered congressional record, assigned in university courses.
Somewhere, Kash Patel sat isolated in his corner office, surrounded by self-made wreckage, haunted eternally by memories of a determined congresswoman who did her homework meticulously, and a simple water glass he could never keep steady.
As of today, December 14, 2025, Kash Patel remains nominally FBI Director.
But the Inspector General's criminal investigation proceeds aggressively. Additional hearings loom.
New revelations and witnesses emerge regularly, exposing further attempts to undermine independent law enforcement.
Jasmine Crockett won re-election in a historic landslide. Progressive leaders already discuss her potential as future Attorney General.
Her cross-examination techniques are studied in law schools nationwide. Young attorneys cite her as inspiration. The FBI slowly heals, removing Patel's political appointees, reopening buried investigations, rebuilding eroded independence. Donald Trump has moved on: new loyalty tests, new enforcers, new efforts to bend institutions.
But the nation remembers. We all remember the water glass trembling uncontrollably. We remember Jasmine Crockett armed solely with exhaustive preparation and unshakable truth, standing firm against corruption. That's the enduring lesson of the saga: preparation defeats brute power.
Facts defeat spin and deflection. Truth defeats blind loyalty. And sometimes beautifully, inspiringly, one courageous person with a well-organized stack of documents can hold the line, defend democracy, and remind us all that accountability endures, even in the darkest chapters.
Which moment resonated most deeply with you?
The repeated water spills symbolizing loss of control, Patel's voice breaking when forced to declare his true allegiance.
The shattering glass as everything collapsed.
Or Crockett's powerful walkout as he sat broken amid the wreckage. Drop a comment below. Share this story widely. Remind others that accountability remains possible even in challenging times. Because nothing inspires more than one person speaking truth to power, and millions watching, learning they possess that same power. The water glass shook and broke, but the truth stood firm, unshaken.